Hi everyone and welcome to my new video. It's finally time to set up my bullet journal for July, which is actually my birthday month and I'm very excited about that. This is probably the most simple theme I've ever done, so if you are looking for some minimalistic bullet journal inspiration, this is the video for you. This whole setup took about 3.5 hours, including the sketching process, so it was a pretty quick theme, at least for me. Speaking about sketching, let's start with that. I always start the sketching process by marking down the center of the page, so I can make sure that the cover isn't lopsided, and I use my handy grid spacing ruler for that, as you can see. I wanted to do a simple theme this month just to take some pressure off, and I also have been experiencing some wrist pain again because I've been crocheting too much, so I started off by gluing this grid paper in the center of the page to give it a little bit more texture. I made sure that the grid is exactly in the center by counting that I have the same amount of dots around it. Then I started sketching the title, and I always like to sketch them beforehand so they look exactly how I want. I actually first wrote the title a bit too high, so I measured how many squares the title takes, and then I drew two guidelines for the top and bottom parts of the letters, if that makes sense. I do this almost every time I'm sketching my spreads, so it ends up looking symmetrical, and I thought I would share this tip as I haven't shown that in my videos before. As always, I used my Tombow fudenosuke pen for the lettering, and by the way, I have listed all the supplies I used in the description, so definitely check that out. I bought some new stationery from Berlin that I wanted to use in this setup, like these two beautiful washi tapes that I'm adding on the top and bottom of the grid paper. I mainly have some neutral colors on my washi tape collection, so I wanted to have a bit more cool toned pink, and this very light green really spoke to me as well. I also bought a couple new Tombow dual brush pens in the shades 076 and 772, which looked really pretty together, so I decided to combine them in this cover page. Like I said earlier, I wanted to keep this setup really simple, so I just drew these simple flowers that I didn't even sketch beforehand, because they were so easy to draw, and I didn't want to take the risk that the pencil marks might show up even after erasing. I drew the leaves in a way that there will be a little white gap in the middle of them, so I wouldn't have to go over them with a white gel pen later. I really like this green shade, which actually might be more yellow or brown, and I think this is the perfect shade for the summer months, as grass always gets a bit more yellowish in July compared to June, at least here in Finland. Anyway, for the flowers I just drew 4 little petals and darkened up the bottom parts by going over them a few times. I feel like I've used pink in basically every theme this year, but it's my favorite color, so I just can't help it. Because I felt like the petals kind of blended together a bit too much, I decided to go over the borders with a white gel pen, and I'm not sure what I think about this. I think it looks nice, but now looking at the footage, the flowers look fine without it as well. Lastly, I went over some parts of the flowers with my colored pencils, but that wasn't very necessary as it didn't make a huge difference. By the way, I'm working on the Berlin travel journal video and I'm hoping to post that one next, so stay tuned. It will be a very chill video, which is perfect if you want to see a little bit more real-time journaling, and I will also share some tips on places I saw there. I also realized that I should start working on my new bullet journal setup, so July is going to be a bit more busy month for me. Anyway, after adding the golden sparkles with my jelly roll, my cover page was done and it was a really quick one. I would love to hear what you think of this more simplistic approach, as my themes are usually a bit more drawing heavy. On the left side I made my quote page and I had a bit of a difficult time finding a nice quote, but luckily Pinterest always saves the day. I again sketched out the quote first and did that couple times, but I cut that part out of the video so it wouldn't be too long. This was my first time sketching all the spreads as I go, as I usually do that before I start filming because it saves a lot of time, so this process was a little bit different for me. I hope this is helpful for you, especially if you have been wondering how I use my grid spacing ruler, and that honestly is a time saver as well, because I don't have to count the dots as much. Anyway, for the quote I chose this one that says, "Hello July, take your time, stay for a while." Summer is really short here in Finland, so I felt like this was the perfect quote, as we are already halfway through the summer and I don't want it to end. I would love to hear how your summer has been so far, or if it's not summer where you live, tell me about June. June was a fun month for me because I traveled to Berlin and got to spend some time with my sister. And in July I will also have a little road trip to see my friend who I haven't seen in a year, I think, so I'm very excited about that. I would love to travel to our summer cottage as well, but as July is going to be busy, it might have to wait till August. My cover spread is finally done, so we can move on to my calendar spread. I didn't have any kind of plan, so I decided to start off by sketching the calendar in place. And July is a weird month because there is this one extra day on the last week of the month, which can look a bit awkward, but I think I made it work. I used my grid spacing ruler again, as I've marked down my calendar layout in there, and in case you are curious, I used 3x4 boxes for it. I'm going to be using a slightly smaller journal for the second half of the year, which I'm a bit nervous about, as I probably have to come up with new layouts, which can be a bit challenging, but I hope it will be fine. I've been using this calendar layout for the longest time, and I'm not sure yet if it will work in the new journal, so things can get interesting, but I think this will be a good challenge for me, and hopefully get me more excited about journaling, as I'm going to be trying out some new things. Anyway, I decided to use this very light peach pink for the calendar, and this is the shade 850, which is a bit warmer than the shade 800, which I've been using in my previous setups. I chose this shade because I wanted to create this gingham pattern, which looks better with lighter colors in my opinion, as the overlapping parts will end up looking slightly darker. I love this pattern because it's such a simple way to decorate the page, and it also looks really cute with this color. On the top of the gingham pattern I wrote the title again, and I also wanted to add the same kind of simple flowers for the decorations, as that was really quick and easy. You could always add some summery doodles like butterflies or bees for the setup if you want to experiment a bit more, but I wanted to keep things more on the simple side this time. Oh, and I wrote the weekdays on top of the calendar with this brown shade Zebra Sarasa gel pen, so they wouldn't take too much attention away from the title like a black fine liner could have done. This theme reminds me a bit of my old May theme from 2020, I think, as I also drew some flowers without black outlines back then. If you would like to see that theme, I've posted a flip through video of my old journals, and I will link that in the description. You can also find it from my flip through playlist, so definitely check those out if you need even more inspiration or ideas. I've tried a lot of different things in these last 6 years, I think, of bullet journaling, and it's always fun to look back and see how much my style has changed over time. Anyway, on the bottom of the spread I added the same grid paper that I used on my cover page, and here I will write some random notes or tasks I have to get done. Because there was a bit of a empty space above it, I decided to create another gingham pattern for the title to make this page a little bit more cohesive and add more color. I really like how these colors go together, and it's not too hard on the eyes because I mainly used light colors, and I usually prefer that look because I use a black pen for filling in my spreads, so there isn't too much going on. On the right side I'm making my habit tracker, and I wanted to combine the grid paper and the gingham pattern in it, so I started off by cutting up mini calendars from the grid paper. I bought this grid paper notepad from Berlin in a shop called Louis, so I don't have to print out my own grid paper anymore. I decided to add the grid paper in every other mini calendar, and for the remaining empty spaces I created a little gingham pattern. I will probably cross off the extra days, even though I prefer this look so I don't get confused when I'm filling this in. As it was the 2nd of July when I was filming this video, I will be writing out the habits I'm tracking this time. As you can see, I have quite a lot of habits I like to track, but I don't do all of them every day, and the goal of using this tracker is to maintain some routines and also to make sure I do things I enjoy as well. If you feel like you have to get streaks in your tracker and you might as well give up the habits if you skip one day, it might not be the best mindset, and getting rid of trackers might be a good idea as well, so you don't end up overachieving everything in life. This is something I've struggled in the past, but these days I try to focus on trying my best instead of being perfect, and having habits that I do only once a week, for example, has really helped because I've got used to seeing trackers that aren't completely filled in. My daily habits are in the top row, and the rest I track just for the fun of it. Anyway, enough about that, let's start setting up my weekly spreads, and this time I'm actually making all of them in this video, so if you have been looking for some weekly spread layouts, you are in for a treat. I started off by cutting out these horizontal dot stores from the 12 dots. I got the horizontal part with scissors, but for the parts near the binding I like to use my X-Acto knife because it has a little bit more precision. Remember to be very careful if you do this though, as it's very easy to cut your notebook's binding and that would be a disaster. You could also add a thick cardstock underneath the page to make sure you are not cutting the other pages underneath, but I was feeling brave on this day and didn't do it. On the top part of the page I added a little grid paper I had laying around, but this has only 5 rows, so I ended up adding the last day of July on the top row, which looks a bit weird, but I was too lazy to cut up a new piece of paper. For the first layout I decided to go for a vertical layout that has this gingham pattern on the top, where I will write the date numbers and weekdays. This is one of my favorite layouts to use because it has a lot of writing space, and you can also easily vary how you create the top part. If you, for example, want a little bit more simplistic layout, you could just write the date numbers with a light color and go over them with a cursive font that has the words connected to each other. For the decorations I drew these flowers again, and I also flipped the Dutch door so I can make sure that the doodles fully show up behind it. I don't know about you, but I really hate if the Dutch door isn't symmetrical and covers up the page underneath, so I always like to make sure that you can't see the layout underneath when you flip the other pages. The reason why I love using Dutch door weeklies is that they save a lot of time because you only have to draw the decorations once, and I think that's the reason why I've been using them a lot this year. After adding the golden sparkles, I moved on to finishing the first layout. I added little pieces of the same washi tapes I used on my cover page, because I really wanted to use them and I kind of forgot to use them on the previous spread. I decided to cut them in half because I didn't have a lot of extra space under the mini calendar. For the numbers, I used the same brownish green color just to give the spread a little bit more contrast and tie the colors together. Usually I go for a bit lighter color for the numbers, but I think this ended up working really well. Then I wrote the weekdays on top with my Tombow fudenosuke pen, so they would stand out from the numbers, and I connected the words together because I really like that look. Now let's move on to the next layout. I decided to use a layout with boxes for each day, and these boxes are 12 dots long and wide, by the way. I used the grid paper for every other box because I really like the texture it gives and it makes the spread a little bit more interesting. I think I got this idea from Tina's Diary or Bloom and Dot, and I will link both accounts in the description so you can check them out. I outlined the other boxes with a dark pink color, and then I decided to use these weekday stickers from Sleepy House Lion because they look really pretty and also saved a bit of time. This was also a good choice for my wrist, which has been a bit tired like I said earlier. I've been crocheting or knitting almost every day for the last 2 weeks and my wrist didn't like that at all. And I know I should take a break, but it just has been too fun, so I just couldn't do it. I will probably ask my boyfriend to hide all my crochet and knitting supplies, so I'm forced to take a break, or maybe I should just take them with me and leave those at my parents' house. Anyway, for the next layout I decided to go for this running task list type of layout, which has little boxes for events on the top, and I haven't used this layout in a while, but I thought it would be a good one for this week because I should work on my planwithme video during it, and I will have a lot of repeating tasks so I don't have to write them over and over again. On the right side I will have a little section for journaling about my day, and I used this yellow dotted paper that I ripped out on my old Moleskine bullet journal. The grid paper that I used earlier wasn't wide enough, so I decided to go for this one instead, and it also gave a nice texture to the spread. For the decorations I again used the same washi tapes as I did before, and I tried to add that on places where I will not be writing, so I will have enough writing space. Besides the washi tapes, I also decided to use this cherry blossom one, which is from Pikkupaperi, which was gifted to me a couple months ago, and I think this worked beautifully with the spread and added a nice pop of color. I also wanted to use these duck stickers that I made inspired by my April theme because I love how they turned out and I still miss them. I would also love to make some capybara stickers from my May theme because I miss the theme as well and think about it all the time. Anyway, let's set up the last weekly spread, which will also be the last spread of this setup. I decided to go for this box layout again because I like how it has a lot of writing space for each day, and this time I used the gingham pattern for every other box instead of the grid paper. I didn't want the spread to end up looking too pink, so I used the green shade for the rest of the boxes, and this spread was really quick and easy to set up. I wrote the weekdays on top on the boxes with my basic handwriting just to change things up a little bit, and this is actually the handwriting I learned in school, but it looks a lot messier when I'm writing my daily tasks because I will write a lot faster. Now it's finally time for the final flip through. I really like how this theme turned out, even though it's quite different compared to my usual style, but it was a nice change and I really enjoyed setting this up. I would love to hear what you think and which was your favorite spread, And I hope you found some inspiration or new ideas from this video, even though I posted it a bit late. Remember to like this video and leave a pink flower emoji in the comments if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!